What if the future already exists? Not in a poetic way, not in a vision board sort of way, but literally, as in right now, your future, next week, next year, the moment you next blink, is already sitting somewhere in space-time, just waiting for your perspective to catch up. It's not an entirely new idea. Philosophers and physicists have been arguing about it for over a century. But here's the unsettling version of it. The future isn't something we move toward. It's something that's already there, fixed, existing, just not accessible. Like an unopened email from the universe that you don't have permission to read yet. For most of us, time feels intuitive. It flows forward. We remember the past, we act in the present, and we wait for the future. That's the model. It's so embedded in our minds that we treat it like a physical law. But what if that model is just a trick of perception? What if the past, the present, and the future are all equally real, all equally there? But our minds are stuck reading the story one word at a time. It sounds dramatic. It sounds like something you'd only say at 3 a.m. after too much caffeine and not enough sleep. But according to several serious branches of physics and more than a few philosophers, that's not a fringe idea. That's a defensible model of reality. It's called eternalism. The idea that all points in time are equally real, that the universe isn't unfolding second by second like a live stream, but more like a film reel. Every frame already exists. You're just moving through them. It challenges how we think about change, choice, identity, everything. If your future already exists, is it still yours? If everything that will happen is already there, what role does free will play? Is it just an illusion stitched into your brain's operating system? A comforting bug in human software? You don't need to be a physicist to wonder about this. You probably felt it, in subtle ways. Déjà vu. The sense that a conversation is playing out exactly how it was supposed to. The eerie feeling that you're walking into something already written. Or maybe just the mundane realization that your calendar next Friday already has a meeting scheduled. And you're probably going to be in it, whether you like it or not. But those feelings point to something deeper. The sense that time isn't quite as fluid or clean as we think. That maybe, beneath the experience of motion, there's something frozen. Something permanent. Something already complete. Tonight, we're going to explore what that means. We'll look at time from the perspective of physics, philosophy, and your own conscious experience. We'll ask what it means to live in a universe where the future might already be real, and how that changes how we think about choice, change, and even selfhood. You don't have to believe it. You just have to hold the thought, carefully, like something fragile that might break if handled too directly. So take a breath, let the question settle, and ask yourself, if the future already exists, what are you doing right now? Because whatever it is, it may have already happened. Before we talk about whether the future exists, we need to ask an annoyingly basic question. What exactly is time? Not just how we feel time, but what it actually is. Underneath the clocks and calendars and countdowns, what are we dealing with? The ancient Greeks didn't even agree on that. They had two words for time, chronos, which was linear, measurable time, what a clock gives you, and kairos, the quality of a moment, its significance or ripeness. One told you what time it was. The other told you why it mattered. That duality never really left us. Today, we still flip between those meanings. Time is something we schedule, waste, save, spend, and sometimes pretend doesn't exist when we're binge-watching something at 2 a.m. But scientifically, time is far more stubborn. In Newton's world, time was absolute. It ticked uniformly across the universe like a divine metronome. Events happened in time the way objects sat in space. Time didn't care about your feelings. It didn't bend, twist, or negotiate. It just moved forward, 1 second per second, forever. That idea worked beautifully for centuries. It helped build the foundations of physics, and it felt right. After all, don't we all experience time the same way? Steady, constant, unforgiving during awkward conversations, and suspiciously fast during vacations. But then Einstein came along and ruined everything. Or improved it, depending on how you feel about having your mental furniture rearranged. Einstein's theory of special relativity told us that time is not absolute. It's not the same for everyone. Your experience of time depends on how fast you're moving and how close you are to massive objects. Time, it turns out, is tangled up with space. Together, they form a fabric, space-time, and that fabric can stretch, compress, and warp. This wasn't just math. It had real consequences. Moving fast, time slows down. Sitting near a black hole, time really slows down. Two people in different conditions can experience different durations between the same two events. In other words, there is no universal now. Which brings us back to the original question. If there's no single present moment shared by everyone, then what makes the present special? Why should this moment right now be any more real than 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes from now? This is where the idea of eternalism starts to look less like science fiction and more like a serious candidate for how time actually works. If different observers disagree about what counts as now, maybe the past, present, and future all exist equally. Maybe our sense of moving through time is just that, a sense, a useful experience crafted by consciousness, but not a reflection of what's actually out there. Think of it this way. You don't say that one part of a road is more real than another just because you're currently standing on it. Every part of the road exists. You're just at one particular spot. Maybe time is like that. A road made of moments, all equally real. You're just standing on this one right now. Of course, if that's true, it raises a problem. One you've probably thought of already. If every moment exists, does that mean it's all predetermined? That's where we're going next. Imagine a clock. Nothing fancy. Just a regular circular face clock with two hands slowly sweeping across its face. It ticks forward, second by second, as if the future were a hallway it's steadily walking down. That's how we usually picture time. Linear, orderly, and moving in one direction. But under the hood of physics, clocks don't always behave the way we expect. In fact, if you dig into how time is treated in modern physics, you'll find that the idea of a single universal clock is about as outdated as phrenology or dial-up internet. Let's return to Einstein, who did more than just complicate time. He dismantled the whole idea of simultaneity. According to special relativity, Whether two events happen at the same time depends entirely on your frame of reference. If two people are moving relative to each other, say one is standing still and the other is riding a very fast train, they won't agree on what counts as now. One person might say two lightning strikes happened at the same time. The other will say one came first. Who's right? Both. Time doesn't play favorites. This leads to a bizarre but well-supported conclusion. There is no objective present, no shared universal now slicing across the cosmos. What's happening now for you might already be in the past, or still in the future, for someone moving differently through space. That means the universe is not unfolding like a live broadcast. It's more like a giant four-dimensional loaf of space-time, with slices that look different depending on where you're standing and how fast you're moving. This is sometimes called the block universe model. Imagine time not as a line that extends behind and ahead of you, but as an entire structure. A static, unchanging block that contains every moment, past, present, and future, all at once. In this model, change is something your consciousness experiences as it travels through the block. But the block itself doesn't change. It just is. So what does that mean for your clock? Well, it depends on who's looking at it and how fast they're moving. For someone else, your 3:15 p.m. might be their 3:17 p.m. or their 3:14 or something entirely out of sync. Every ticking second you experience is just one slice of a much larger structure. And all those other seconds, they exist too, just not for you, not right now. It's unsettling at first. Time stops being a river and becomes more like a library. Each moment is a book on a shelf, already written. You're just flipping through them at a fixed pace, unable to jump ahead or reread. Of course, this raises more questions. If all moments already exist, then what happens to our choices? To the sense that we're actively shaping what happens next? Are we just reading a script, one line at a time, under the illusion that we're writing it? Or is there some wiggle room between the shelves? That's what we'll explore next. Because if the block universe is real, then the future isn't waiting to happen. It's already there. Time feels obvious. You wake up, things happen, and eventually you go to bed. The clock ticks, the sun moves. Your email inbox fills up faster than it empties. But if you try to pin down what time actually is, it slips through your fingers. It's like trying to define now. You can point to it, sort of. You can feel it happening. But by the time you name it, it's already something else. Our experience of time is strangely rigid and strangely fragile. It's linear, forward-moving, and irreversible, except when it's not. Boredom makes minutes stretch. Urgency makes them vanish. A dream can feel like it lasts an hour, even though it fits inside a few seconds. So which version of time is real? This is the puzzle. Physics gives us one picture of time, and our brains give us another, and they don't always line up. In physics, the laws that govern particles and forces are, for the most part, time symmetric. That means they don't care whether time flows forward or backward. If you ran the universe in reverse, mathematically, most things would still make sense. The equations would still work. A video of atoms colliding would look just as valid backwards as it does forwards. But human experience doesn't work like that. We don't uneat breakfast. We don't get younger. you can't unsneeze. The past is fixed and remembered. The future is unknown and unwritten. So what's creating that asymmetry? If time doesn't need to flow forward, why does it feel like it does? One major suspect is entropy, the measure of disorder in a system. In simple terms, entropy increases over time. Ice melts, buildings crumble, clean rooms get messy. It's much easier for a system to become more disordered than to spontaneously become more ordered. This creates what physicists call the arrow of time. It's not time itself that flows. It's entropy that gives time a direction. From the perspective of the block universe, entropy is what creates the illusion of change. All the moments already exist, but the low entropy beginning and the high entropy future create a gradient. Like a slope, your consciousness slides down, moment by moment. This is one reason why we remember the past but not the future. Memory itself is an effect of entropy. It takes energy to record and store information. And once it's stored, it doesn't spontaneously unstore itself. So if time is just a dimension, like space, and all points in time already exist, then what we call now is just the point we're currently experiencing along the entropy slope. The rest of the timeline is still there. We just can't access it. Which brings us back to our question. What if the future already exists? Well, according to many physicists and philosophers, it might. It's not just a possibility waiting to happen. It's a place, a location in space-time, every bit as real as the past and the present. You just aren't there yet. Of course, that raises another question. If the future already exists, then what happens to free will? Are your choices actually choices? Or are they just you catching up with decisions that have already been made? We'll get to that. But don't worry. If determinism turns out to be true, you are always going to keep watching anyway. Philosophers have been trying to figure out time since long before relativity complicated everything. Long before entropy had a say. Even before clocks got involved. At the heart of the debate are three major theories of time: presentism, eternalism, and the growing block theory. Each tries to answer the same question. What moments in time actually exist? Let's start with presentism, the simplest and most intuitive model. Presentism says only the present is real. The past is gone. The future hasn't happened yet. You exist right now in this moment, and nothing else is actually there. The past is a memory. The future is a maybe. This feels right to most people because it matches our lived experience. You're not worried about what your 6th birthday is doing right now because it's not doing anything. It's gone. Meanwhile, next Tuesday only exists on your calendar and in your vague anxiety about it. But presentism runs into trouble when you look at physics. If different observers experience time differently, if there's no objective now, then who's present is the real one? The person standing still, the person on the train, the person falling into a black hole. Suddenly, now looks suspiciously local, and if the present isn't the same for everyone, how can it be the only thing that's real? Enter eternalism, which flips the table. Eternalism says the past, present, and future all exist equally. You're not living in the one real moment. You're just experiencing one slice of a much bigger structure. The past isn't gone. The future isn't waiting. They're both already there. It's the block universe model. All moments are fixed in space-time, and your perception of time passing is just the path your consciousness takes through that block. This has some advantages. It fits well with relativity, where time isn't absolute. It treats all observers fairly, regardless of where or when they are. And it makes the laws of physics nice and symmetric. Of course, it's also a little unnerving, because if all of time already exists, then your choices might just be artifacts of a path that's already carved. That's where the unease creeps in. Eternalism might be elegant, but it doesn't leave much room for improvisation. Somewhere in between these two sits the growing block theory. Think of it as the philosophical compromise. In this model, the past and present are real, but the future is not. Time is a block, yes, but it's still being built. The present is like a construction site, and everything before it is a finished building. The future is just blueprints, possible, but not yet real. This has a certain narrative appeal. It allows for a real past and a real now, while preserving the idea that the future is open. It gives you room to act, to change things, to surprise yourself. But it also raises questions. If the future isn't real, how does the present know where to go next? How do physical laws operate consistently if the future isn't part of the equation? Does the block grow all at once, or one moment at a time? Each theory solves one problem and creates another. Presentism feels intuitive, but breaks under relativity. Eternalism works well with physics, but messes with free will. Growing block tries to rescue both, but ends up with loose ends of its own. And yet, all three are still taken seriously. You'll find philosophers, scientists, and cosmologists aligned with each one, all depending on what they think reality ought to look like. So which one is right? Well, if eternalism turns out to be true, then you've already made up your mind. You're just catching up to it. Let's slow it down and sit with eternalism for a moment. Because if this theory is right, then you're not watching this video in time. You're watching it from within time. Like a passenger on a train, staring out the window, watching moments pass by that already exist. In the eternalist view, time is not flowing. It's not moving, ticking, slipping away, or any of the usual metaphors we use to describe it. It simply exists, all of it, at once. Imagine the universe as a loaf of bread. Each slice is a moment in time. Your birth is in there. So is the fall of Rome. So is your next dentist appointment, all equally baked into the loaf. You, as a conscious observer, are just stuck on one slice at a time. But the loaf is whole, complete, and unchanging. That's the block universe. It's tempting to say this sounds philosophical, a bit poetic even, but it's not just a thought experiment. The mathematics of special relativity lead directly to this idea. The lack of absolute simultaneity, the relativity of time, and the geometric nature of space-time all point toward a universe where every event, past, present, and future, has an equal claim on existence. In this model, the word now loses its universal status. There's no single present moment shared by all observers. Instead, your now is just a thin slice of a much larger whole. What's present for you might already be in the past, or still in the future for someone else, depending on their speed and position. So what does that mean for change? In a strange twist, change becomes a matter of perspective. The block universe doesn't change. It doesn't evolve. Every state of every system exists eternally within its own coordinates in space-time. What you experience as change is just your conscious experience moving along a particular path within that block. It's like watching a movie one frame at a time. You see motion, development, and action, but the film itself is already finished. The beginning, middle, and end are already recorded. You're just perceiving them in sequence. Now this might sound like it turns you into a passive observer, like you're strapped into a cosmic theme park ride with no steering wheel. But that's not quite the whole story. Eternalism doesn't necessarily deny agency. It just forces us to redefine what agency means. From within the block, your decisions still feel like choices. They still matter, emotionally and morally. It's just that, from a higher dimensional perspective, your choice is a fixed part of a larger structure. Think of it this way. If your life is a timeline embedded in space-time, then your actions are still part of that timeline. They're still yours. You're not being puppeteered. You're just not surprising the universe as much as you might think. And maybe that's not a bad thing. There's a quiet comfort in the idea that every moment exists forever, that nothing is ever truly lost, only out of reach, that the best conversations, the hardest choices, the deepest laughs, the worst days, and the quietest mornings are all permanently written into the structure of reality. Eternalism invites you to think of your life not as something fleeting, but as something whole, a shape in time, not being erased second by second, but always existing, complete, intricate, and unrepeatable. So if the future already exists, maybe you don't need to rush toward it. You're already there. You just haven't reached that page yet. So if the future already exists, does that mean your choices don't? It's the most common and most uncomfortable question that follows eternalism. If every moment is already out there in the block universe, then aren't you just following a pre-written script? Are you choosing anything or just discovering what's already been decided? Let's pull back for a second. Free will, in the everyday sense, means that you can choose between options. Coffee or tea, this path or that one. You weigh, decide, act. You don't feel like you're being dragged by fate through a predetermined maze. You feel like a participant. Eternalism doesn't directly say you're not choosing. It just says your choice exists, always has, always will. Your decision isn't less real because it's fixed in the fabric of space-time. It's part of your timeline, and that timeline is part of the whole structure. From within the block, it feels like a choice. And subjectively, that's what matters. The experience of choosing is still yours. The outcome still reflects your reasoning, your habits, your quirks. But it does mean you don't have access to alternatives. You don't get to rerun the decision. The block only contains the path you actually took, not the ones you considered. Some thinkers try to reconcile this with a concept called compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can coexist. You can be free in the sense that your actions come from you, even if they're embedded in a fixed structure. Others find that unsatisfying. They want wiggle room. They want the future to be open, not just unexplored. But here's the thing. Not knowing what's coming doesn't mean it isn't there. Ignorance of a result doesn't change its existence. You can still struggle, weigh, wonder, and in that moment, That's what free will feels like. Whether or not it's real in the cosmic sense may be the wrong question. You're still the one making the decision. Even if, from outside the block, you've already made it. If the future is already out there, as eternalism suggests, then why can't we get to it? Why do we seem permanently anchored to this one thin moment called now? It's a fair question. If past, present, and future are equally real, it's tempting to imagine that we should be able to move through them like rooms in a house. But so far, we can't. We can only go one way. Forward, slowly, and with no ability to turn around. Physics gives us part of the answer. The laws of relativity allow for the idea that all moments exist, but they don't give us a method for moving backward or jumping ahead. There's no machine, no equation, no loophole that lets you accelerate consciousness into a different time slice. At least, not yet. The closest we get is moving at relativistic speeds. The faster you go, the more time slows for you relative to others. If you traveled near the speed of light and returned, you'd find that more time passed for the people you left behind than for you. In that sense, you could visit the future, but only by skipping over the parts where your life would have unfolded normally. So it's not really travel, it's just asymmetric aging. The deeper reason we can't move freely through time may lie in entropy. As we discussed earlier, entropy increases in one direction, giving time its arrow. Memory, causality, and physical processes are all built around this one-way structure. Moving forward makes sense. Moving backward would break everything, from thermodynamics to your ability to remember your own name. As for jumping ahead, we might just be structurally incapable. Consciousness might only exist as movement through time. The awareness you're using to wonder about the future might be tied to a flow you can't detach from. The future may be real, but you can't reach it for the same reason you can't stare at the back of your own head. Not because it isn't there, but because your perspective just isn't built to look that way. Eternalism isn't just a poetic idea. It grows directly out of the physics of special relativity. Einstein's theory that changed how we understand space, time, and what counts as now. At the heart of special relativity is the idea that time is relative. Not metaphorically, but literally. Two observers moving at different speeds won't agree on when things happen. Events that seem simultaneous to one person may appear out of sync to another. It's not a glitch. It's not perception. It's built into the fabric of space-time itself. This is where the block universe idea takes root. If different observers can disagree about the order of events, then the past, present, and future can't be neatly separated. What one person sees as the present, another might see as the past or the future. That's not just weird, it's profound. It implies that all events in space-time exist equally, just arranged differently depending on where and how you're looking. Instead of thinking about time as a line we move along, special relativity invites us to think of it as a dimension we're embedded in. Just like space has width, height, and depth, space-time has time as an added axis. And just like every location in space exists, whether or not you're standing there, every location in time exists, whether or not you're experiencing it. Your birth, your final day, and everything in between are coordinates on the same fabric. This isn't speculation. is geometry. In physics, we often represent events as points in space-time, marked by their location and moment. Together, these points form a structure, unchanging and complete. It's unsettling because it challenges our experience. We feel like time is passing, but relativity tells us the passage of time may be something happening in us, not to the universe. So the block universe isn't a sci-fi fantasy. It's the natural implication of how space and time work together. A static whole, within which motion and change are slices, not flows. And if you're just a path through that block, then every moment along it, past, future, and even now, already exists, whether you're aware of it or not. Imagine you have a twin. You stay on Earth. They hop on a spaceship, accelerate to near the speed of light, and take a long trip through space. When they return, something strange has happened. They've aged less than you. That's not science fiction. That's time dilation, a real, measured effect predicted by special relativity. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time, relative to someone standing still. In other words, your twin didn't just feel like their trip was short. It was short for them. Their clock ticked more slowly. Their biology aged more slowly. Their entire experience unfolded at a different rate than yours. The weird part? Both of you are right. You experienced more time. They experienced less. That contradiction doesn't need resolving because it's not a contradiction. It's how space-time works. Time dilation has been proven experimentally. Atomic clocks on fast-moving planes tick slightly slower than identical clocks on the ground. GPS satellites adjust for it constantly to maintain accuracy. It's not theoretical. It's baked into modern technology, but it has philosophical consequences. If two people can experience different amounts of time between the same two events, then time clearly isn't absolute. It's not some cosmic metronome ticking away independently of everything else. It's elastic. It depends on speed, on gravity, on perspective. That means your now isn't fixed. It doesn't slice across the universe like a universal moment of truth. Instead, it's local. It depends on where you are and how fast you're moving. This strengthens the block universe view. If people can move through time at different rates, then there must be a larger structure that allows for those differences to make sense. A framework where all those events already exist, even if they're experienced out of sync. Time isn't the same for everyone, but all of it is still there. So when someone asks why you're always late, feel free to explain that time is relative and you're simply exploring the block universe on your own terms. Just don't expect them to buy it. Let's take another look at time dilation, but this time through one of the most famous and most mind-bending examples in physics, the twin paradox. The scenario is simple enough. Identical twins start on Earth. One stays home. The other boards a spaceship, travels near the speed of light for what feels like a few years, then turns around and comes back. When they reunite, they're not the same age anymore. The traveling twin is younger, not by much if the trip was short, but enough to prove something strange. Time didn't pass at the same rate for both of them. It's not a trick. It's not a malfunctioning stopwatch. It's how the universe operates. Why does this happen? Because motion through space affects motion through time. In relativity, the faster you move through space, the slower time moves for you relative to others. And since the spaceship twin was moving quickly, time literally ran slower for them. Their heartbeat fewer times. Their cells divided more slowly. They experienced fewer seconds than their sibling. Now, you might wonder, shouldn't the twin on the ship see the Earth twin moving instead? Shouldn't they think you're the one traveling and aging slowly? That's the paradox. But it's resolved by the fact that the traveling twin changes direction. They accelerate, decelerate, and break the symmetry. In relativity, acceleration matters. The twin who turns around and comes back is the one who experiences the shift. So this isn't a contradiction. It's a demonstration of how relativity affects the structure of time. And what it implies is bigger than just aging twins. It means that time isn't some universal backdrop we all share. It's a dimension affected by your motion, your gravity, your trajectory through space-time. And that means different timelines can unfold at different rates, even if they all fit within the same block. In the eternalist view, both twins' timelines exist completely, from birth to reunion. You're just observing different paths through the same structure. And the difference in aging, it's not a glitch. It's baked into the geometry of the universe. So far, we've treated time as a one-way journey through the block universe. You don't rewind, you don't skip ahead, and you definitely don't loop back to last Thursday to fix that awkward conversation. But in 1949, mathematician Kurt Gödel, yes, the same Gödel, who gave us those delightful incompleteness theorems, applied Einstein's equations in a way that suggested something strange. A universe where time loops back on itself. A closed time-like curve, as it's called, is a path through space-time that brings you back to your own past. Not metaphorically, literally. In this kind of universe, it's possible to take a trip and arrive before you left. Gödel's solution to general relativity involved a rotating universe. As space-time twisted, it would allow these time loops to form. A weird side effect of geometry, not magic. Now, this doesn't mean our universe actually works like that. There's no evidence we live in a giant cosmic washing machine. But Gödel's model wasn't dismissed. It was mathematically sound. And it opened a floodgate of speculation. Could time loops really exist? General relativity doesn't forbid them. Other solutions, like Tipler cylinders and traversable wormholes, also suggest possibilities for time travel under the right conditions. The catch is that they often require things like negative energy, infinite cylinders, or patience for paradox. Speaking of paradox, time loops bring some baggage. If you go back and change something, say, convince your past self not to record that embarrassing voicemail, what happens? Do you create a new timeline? Cause a contradiction? Snap the logic of the universe in half? Physicists have wrestled with this. Some say time protects itself. Any loop you complete must already be part of the timeline. You can't change the past because you already didn't. Whatever happened, happened. Sorry about the voicemail. Others argue that quantum mechanics or multiple timelines might allow more flexibility, but that's a rabbit hole for another day. The point is this. Gödel showed us that time doesn't always have to move forward. Under the right conditions, it could bend, twist, or fold back in on itself. And if that's possible, even in theory, then our grip on time as linear, one-way and final gets a little looser, which is good. You weren't done thinking about this yet anyway. We talk about the present as if it's obvious. It's now, this very moment. Whatever you're hearing, thinking, feeling, this is it. The present is where you live, where things happen, where time is real. But the more you examine it, the blurrier it gets. Neurologically, your brain doesn't operate in real time. It processes sensory input in small windows, usually around 100 to 400 milliseconds, and stitches them together into what feels like a smooth flow. This lag means your now is always slightly behind what actually happened. Your eyes, ears, and skin don't all report in at the same speed, so your brain holds back faster inputs just long enough to sync them with slower ones. The result is a unified moment that never quite corresponds to reality. We're not built to experience time as it is. We experience it as a coherent illusion, constructed from fragments, slightly delayed and heavily edited. This specious present, as some philosophers call it, is not a point but a short stretch. It's the brain's best guess at what's happening. It gives you a stable sense of the world, but it's not fixed, and it's not universal. Different species, individuals, and even states of mind can shift its length. From a physics standpoint, the present isn't much better. As we've seen, relativity denies the idea of a single now that spans the universe. What's happening now for you might be in the past or future for someone else. So what is the present? Maybe it's just the part of the block universe your consciousness is currently experiencing. A mental cursor highlighting one slice of the whole structure as it scrolls. Or maybe now is just a convenience, a way of organizing experience so we don't lose our minds trying to live in all of time at once. Either way, it's a construction, a functional, necessary, and slightly misleading artifact of biology. So the next time you say, live in the moment, keep in mind, the moment doesn't really exist. Not as a thing, just as a feeling. Your sense of time isn't just about the present. It's also shaped by what you remember and what you expect. Memory and anticipation act like anchors on either side of the now. You recall the past, you imagine the future, and between those two mental acts, you form the illusion of a timeline. But memory is not a perfect playback, it's a reconstruction. Every time you recall an event, your brain edits it, filling in blanks, changing details, sometimes fabricating entire pieces. Memories feel stable, but they're more like stories retold by an unreliable narrator. Means well. And yet, they're essential. Without memory, you wouldn't have a sense of self. You wouldn't be able to track continuity or make meaning from change. The past would just be gone, and you'd be stranded in a sequence of disconnected moments. On the other side, there's anticipation, the brain's habit of simulating what's likely to happen next. This isn't just daydreaming. It's how you cross the street, finish sentences, and prepare for impact when someone says, "We need to talk." Your brain is constantly predicting, adjusting, running simulations. Neuroscientists even argue that perception itself is a form of prediction. You don't just passively absorb the present. You actively guess what it will be, then correct for error. This creates a kind of mental timeline. Past experiences inform expectations. Expectations shape reactions. You're not simply observing time. You're building it as you go. And interestingly, both memory and anticipation seem tied to the same neural networks. Damage the hippocampus, and people lose the ability to remember their past, and also lose the ability to imagine their future. The same machinery builds both directions of time, which raises an eerie question. If your brain couldn't remember or anticipate, would time still feel like it exists? Or would you be suspended in something closer to timelessness? The past, the future, and the self. They may all be stitched together by the same loop of mental activity. And the moment that loop breaks, the whole timeline might vanish with it. Of all the strange things about time, one of the most reliable is that it has a direction. We don't get younger. We don't unbake bread. We don't inhale smoke back into a cigarette. Time flows from past to future, and never the other way around. But the deeper you look into physics, the less obvious this becomes. Most fundamental laws of nature don't care about direction. They work just as well forwards as they do backwards. Flip the equations, and nothing breaks. At the microscopic level, particles don't seem to know which way time is pointing. So why, at the scale of human life, does time feel so one way? The answer comes down to entropy, a measure of disorder in a system. The second law of thermodynamics says that in an isolated system, entropy tends to increase. Order becomes disorder. Hot becomes cold. Ice melts. Complexity dissolves into simplicity. This trend gives us the arrow of time. Not because the universe is narrating its story forward, but because the early universe started in a state of astonishing low entropy. That unlikely order at the beginning set the stage for everything to run downhill. Your memories exist because entropy increases. You remember the past, not the future, because the brain is wired to track change across this rising gradient of disorder. Causality follows the same slope. In a block universe, all moments exist, but only some of them follow this thermodynamic arrow. Your conscious experience is one of those paths. Entropy is why broken things stay broken, why you can scramble eggs but not unscramble them, why life is a short, structured burst in an otherwise chaotic landscape. It doesn't just give time direction, it gives time meaning. It's the reason we feel like we're moving forward, even if the underlying structure of time has no preference. Without entropy, time wouldn't feel like anything. There'd be no distinction between before and after, no story, just a cold, symmetrical structure with no flow. So the next time you sigh about time slipping away, remember, it's not slipping, it's climbing, and entropy is the slope. If all of time exists, past, present, and future, then your entire life is already there, not unfolding, but embedded, a path through the block universe. Which raises an odd question. What exactly is your consciousness doing in all this? In a timeless block, where every event is already fixed, your awareness seems strangely mobile. You feel like you're moving through time. You remember what came before, anticipate what comes next, and exist in a narrow window you call now. But if nothing in the block is changing, where does that movement come from? One possibility is that consciousness isn't moving at all. It's simply located at a specific point along your timeline. What you experience as flow is just the state of being aware in one slice of your existence. Think of a flipbook. Each page is a moment. Consciousness is what it feels like to be on one particular page. From your perspective, the pages seem to turn. But from the outside, the flipbook is already complete. Some theories go further. They suggest that consciousness is not just aware of a single moment, but constructed from it. That each moment of self-awareness is a discrete, self-contained event. There is no single you traveling the block, just a collection of conscious snapshots, each believing it's part of a continuous story. That's unsettling, sure, but it's not entirely unfamiliar. You already know what it's like to vanish from awareness. Every night when you sleep, you cease to experience. Then, hours later, awareness resumes, sometimes in the same story, sometimes in a dream, sometimes confused and unsure of how much time has passed. The block universe doesn't erase consciousness. It just reframes it. You're not a ghost drifting from moment to moment. You're a structure, made of experience, bound to a path, embedded in a larger whole. In that view, the question isn't where consciousness goes. It's where it already is. Right now, it's here. Listening, thinking, wondering if you've been here before. And from the block's perspective, you always have been. If time is a dimension, and you're a path through it, then who or what are you exactly? We often think of the self as a continuous, unified thing. You're the same person today that you were yesterday, give or take some bad decisions and caffeine levels. But in the block universe, continuity isn't assumed. It's constructed. In space-time, you aren't a point. You're a world line, a continuous trajectory stretching from birth to death. Every moment you've lived is a location on that line. Every future moment is there too, already fixed in the structure. Your life isn't unfolding, it's extended. So the self becomes less like a being and more like a pattern. Not a static object, but a sequence of moments stitched together by memory, biology, and perception. It's tempting to picture this as a kind of tube winding through space-time, full of overlapping thoughts, experiences, and neural firings. But even that metaphor doesn't quite capture the strangeness of it, because the self we experience, this sense of I am, exists only in one slice at a time. You're never aware of your entire timeline. You're only ever here. Which invites a question. Is there a real, unified you running across all those moments? Or are there just many copies, each conscious in their own frame, each convinced it's the real one? In this view, the you listening to this right now is not the same you who started this video. Not fundamentally. That earlier version still exists in the block. So will the one who presses pause, or doesn't. Some philosophers call this the stage theory of selfhood, where each moment of you is its own actor, playing a role that feels continuous because of overlapping memory and identity. It's less poetic than a soul, but more precise. Of course, none of this changes how it feels to be you. Continuity is convincing. Experience feels like a smooth line. And maybe that's the point. You don't need to see your whole timeline to live it. You just need to show up for the frame you're in. Eternalism has a way of sneaking up on you. At first it sounds abstract, a metaphysical shrug about time. But once it sinks in, it starts to rewire how you think about everything. Choice, loss, change, and what it means to be real. Let's start with the comforting part. If eternalism is true, then nothing is ever really lost. every moment of your life still exists, quietly preserved in the structure of space-time. Your happiest day, your worst mistake, the laugh you thought you forgot, all of it, forever fixed. The people you miss, still there. Not metaphorically, not as memories, as slices in the block. You can't access them, but they haven't been erased. The universe didn't delete them. It just moved your consciousness along. There's something soothing about that, a sense that nothing slips away, even when it feels like everything does. But there's a darker side too. If every moment exists, then so do the painful ones, the arguments, the grief, the humiliation you still wince at in the shower. They're all baked into the block, just as permanent as the joy. And then there's the question of agency. If your future is already fixed, if it exists as surely as your past, then where is your freedom? Are you doing things or just playing your part in a structure that couldn't unfold any other way? Some find that thought unbearable. They want a future that's open, malleable, unwritten. They want to be authors, not characters. But others find it peaceful. If your story is already there, then you can stop grasping at control. You can live the frame you're in, without the pressure to rewrite the ones ahead. You can let go a little. Eternalism doesn't force you to pick a side. It simply presents a structure. The emotional weight, that's up to you. Is it comforting to know your best moments are still real? Or disturbing to think your future is already carved? Maybe it's both. Maybe it should be. Because big ideas don't always give you answers. Sometimes they just give you better questions. After all this, let's come back to the simplest and slipperiest question. Is time real? It sounds straightforward, but what do we even mean by real? If by real we mean something that exists independently of how we perceive it, then time gets complicated. Because on one hand, our experience of time, its flow, direction, pacing, is clearly tied to how our brains operate. It's constructed, filtered, interpreted. But on the other hand, the structure of space-time in physics is very much real. It's measurable, predictable, testable, and in that framework, time isn't something that passes, it's something that is. Time, in relativity, is a dimension, like width or height. You don't ask whether height is real. It's a property of how space is organized. Same with time. It's part of the geometry of the universe. So yes, time is real. But it may not be the kind of real we're used to. It's not an invisible current pulling you forward. It's a coordinate, a position, an axis that, together with space, forms the backdrop of everything that happens. Your experience of time moving, that's not a property of time. That's a property of you. Now, some physicists and philosophers push further. They argue that time is an illusion altogether, that nothing actually changes, and that change itself is a trick of limited perception. Julian Barber, for example, argues for a timeless physics, where what we experience as time is just the illusion of motion between static configurations of the universe. Each moment is a complete, self-contained reality. Our sense of flow is just our consciousness jumping between them. Others reject that view entirely, insisting that change is fundamental and that time is what allows cause and effect, evolution, and complexity. So which is it? The truth may be that time is real, but not in the way it feels. It's not flowing. It's not waiting. It's not passing you by. It's already there, all of it. You're not chasing the future or dragging the past. You're just occupying a point in a structure that doesn't move, but lets you believe it does. Now that we've peeled back the layers of time, relativity, entropy, memory, loops, and all, what's left to say about the present? Maybe not much. Not because it's unimportant, but because it might not exist in the way we think. The present feels like a spotlight, illuminating one moment at a time, moving steadily forward. But in the block universe, the spotlight is just your perspective. The stage is already built. So this moment, right now, isn't passing. It's not fading into history. It's simply located, like a place on a map, like a page in a book. It's not behind you or ahead of you. It is you in this exact slice of space-time. You can't hold on to it, but you also don't need to, because eternalism gives every moment the same weight. Nothing is more real just because you're experiencing it. And nothing is less real just because you're not. Your first birthday still exists. So does your last breath. So does whatever strange decision you'll make next Tuesday at 2:17 p.m. They're all part of the same structure. Fixed, full, complete. And yet, even knowing this, you'll keep feeling the flow. You'll still worry about time running out. You'll still count down, wait up, look back, because the illusion is sticky. It has to be. It's what keeps the movie running in your head. But maybe now you'll see it differently. Maybe the next time you catch yourself wishing a moment would last, you'll remember it already does. It's not going anywhere. It's just waiting in its place, like all the others. The present doesn't need to be clung to or chased. It doesn't need to be lived in. It just needs to be noticed, and maybe quietly thanked for showing up right on time.